Hi, this is Holly of Holly's Soapmaking. In this video, I'll show you how I made a rhubarb soap using a Himalayan rhubarb powder oil infusion. You'll find all the links and information listed below, and if you're interested in the recipe I used, you'll find it listed at the end in a soap calculator. Soapmaking involves the use of lye, which can burn your skin and permanently damage your eyes. So be sure to learn and practice lye-safe handling procedures during the entire soapmaking process, even while cleaning up. I recently had a request to make a rhubarb soap video, and I've been meaning to try it ever since reading a post by Tanya of Lovely Greens, where she makes the most beautiful vibrant red Himalayan rhubarb soap. In Tanya's post, which I highly recommend and will link below, she mentions that different varieties of rhubarb can yield different results. So I purchased and experimented with several kinds, and I'll show comparison photos later in the video. But the one I used for this video was a mustard yellow colored Himalayan rhubarb powder from the yarn tree. I recently found another one by Botanical Colors that I've ordered and really want to try that one as well. I'll link all of these in the description box below. Besides the oil infusions I made with these powders, I also tried putting the rhubarb powder directly in the lye water. I'll include photos at the end to show you why I've kind of given up on that method for the time being. To create the oil infusion, I added 1 teaspoon of the rhubarb powder for every 100 grams of olive oil. I wanted to replace all 500 grams of olive oil in my recipe with the infused oil. So I measured out 5½ teaspoons of rhubarb powder and then weighed out 550 grams of olive oil to ensure I had enough for my recipe. Once the powder is mixed into the oil, you can sit the jar in a dark place for about 6 weeks, shaking it every so often to keep the powder distributed in the oil. I never seem to have enough patience for this method, so I place the jar in a warm water bath for about 2 to 3 hours like I've demonstrated in previous videos. I'll include some links to my Calendula oil infusion video and some posts on both infusion methods in case you need more information. After the oil was infused, I let it sit for another day or two so all of the powder settled on the bottom of the jar. I noticed there were still a few bits floating in the oil, so I did strain it through cheesecloth to remove those. I let the infusion finish draining and moved on to preparing the lye and oils. I weighed the distilled water and sodium hydroxide into separate containers, then combined them and gently stirred. When you're making the lye for your soap, remember to always add the sodium hydroxide to the water, never the other way around, because it can cause sputtering or even erupt out of the container. Be sure to work in a well-ventilated area away from children and pets, and don't stand directly over the container or breathe any of the fumes. I stirred the lye gently until I was sure the sodium hydroxide had completely dissolved. Then I sat it aside to cool down and moved on to weighing out the butters and oils. I started with the cocoa butter first since it has the highest melting point. Then I weighed out the shea butter and coconut oil. While the hard oils and butters were warming, I weighed out the rhubarb infused olive oil and castor oil. I didn't get back to the shop until much later, so both the oils and lye had cooled down to the same temperature of 80 degrees Fahrenheit. As I mentioned in my previous video, as long as they are somewhere between room temp and 95 degrees Fahrenheit and the oils haven't solidified, I don't really worry too much about the temperatures being that close. Just be aware that you could experience a false trace when soaping at cooler temperatures. If you need help recognizing false trace, be sure to check out the safety section in the description box below for a great video by Lisa of I Dream in Soap, where she details all the stages of trace. I did oven process the soap to ensure the entire loaf went through gel phase, so the final color was as bright and vibrant as possible. I removed the soap the next morning and then unmolded and cut it that afternoon. I left the small guest soap on the counter to prevent it from going through gel phase, just to compare. It was still a really pretty color, but just a bit lighter than the gelled soap. After the cut soaps sat for a few hours, they were uniform in color, and then slowly changed from the initial coral red to the deep magenta you see in the finished soaps that I photographed a week later. As I mentioned in the beginning, I also tried adding rhubarb powder directly to the lye water. I was able to get a dark burgundy, so I tried lowering the amount of rhubarb powder in hopes of a red color, but ended up with a pinkish brown instead. I have a few more ideas to try, and if I ever achieve a pretty red, I'll definitely make a video about it. I made sure the top of lye was set to sodium hydroxide since this is a cold processed soap. My recipe oil weight was 1,000 grams. I used a 35% lye concentration, which means my lye solution consisted of 35% sodium hydroxide and 65% water. If you'd rather not use this much of a water discount, you can set this to 33% or 31% instead. I left the superfat at 5% and my fragrance usage rate was 40 grams per kilogram. Once you have all of your information entered, you just select to calculate the recipe, then to view or print it. SoapCalc will give you a really nice listing of all of your ingredients, including the amount of sodium hydroxide required to saponify your oils. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found something useful here to help you in your soap making.